All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome here on YouTube for a live special edition of Every Rocky Ever, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, under the Fans First Sports Network. We got a special one here. I am your host, Skylar Timmins, joined here, as always, by my brother wearing his Inca-Cola shirt and County Cappies hat, sitting in his basement.
Hello. Yes.
We've got Dustin Timmins, and it's not just, we got special guests here for this one. Special player for Todd Helton, a special episode in general. So we figured let's bring in some friends of the show, guys we always appreciate talking to on podcasts and Rockies baseball. We've got Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies.
Hello. So excited to be here. I feel like I got to outperform our beloved Rockies. I'm on the road this time. I think this might be my first road appearance here with you guys instead of the home turf on Locked On. So I'm going to have to make sure I'm on my A game here.
And we also have one Evan Lang from the Affected by Altitude podcast, my cohort over at Rocky Mountain Rooftop and purpleroad.com.
I think surprisingly, this is my first appearance on Every Rocky Ever, though I have made demands to be on episodes when you feature specific players that haven't been done yet.
We always record them after the fact.
Yeah, when you do Jeff Cirillo, this guy right here.
Here we go. I don't think we've gotten to Cirillo yet. But we got our friend Patrick Lyons was going to be here from Just Baseball. Unfortunately, just some scheduling issues, but he's here in spirit, and I'm sure we'll get him on something else. A good friend of the show, but he is gone but not forgotten here this afternoon, or here this evening as we record. But a special episode here because it's a special weekend as we record this and doing it here live on YouTube. And it's Todd Helton Hall of Fame weekend. Coming up here on Sunday will be the induction ceremony where Todd Helton will be joining Adrian Beltre and Joe Mauer as the class of 2024, along with former Rockies manager Jim Leland, which is a fun little tidbit, little connection there for the Rockies.
I know he's going in with the Rockies hat, right? Leland said for sure. That's the one he said.
Yeah, that one season in '99, best year ever. But a special episode, and we figured we should do right by Todd Helton, who's the best Rocky ever. He is the epitome of every Rocky ever because he is Mr. Rocky, the guy that was here for 17 years. So we want to do right by him and have a good little conversation here, talking about, I'm sure a lot of our favorite player for a lot of us and a lot of Rockies fans. And so, as always, we'll hand it off to Dustin here for the quick rundown of one Mr. Todd Lynn Helton.
Todd Helton, lefty bat, through lefty, first base, number 17, forever in our hearts, out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, Helton was drafted out of high school by the Padres in the second round. I was like, no, I got better things to do. So he went on to play at the University of Tennessee, played football and baseball, and something I always wanted to see is Todd Helton close a game like he did in college. But he was chosen in the first round, 8th pick overall in the 1995 draft by the Rockies, and immediately made an impact, made his major league debut August 2nd, 1997 against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and went 2 for 4 with a home run, and played for the Rockies from 1997 till 2013. He was that staple at first base, Hall of Fame, 5-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove, 4-time Silver Slugger, a batting title, and played his last game for the Rockies September 29th, 2013, and he went 1 for 4 against the Dodgers. So it made his debut at age 23 and finished at age 40.
There you go. A good long career for one Todd Helton. And before we get into a bunch of the stuff here, I just want to, what are, I guess, your immediate reactions, or what, when you think of Todd Helton, and we'll throw this out to Paul and Evan, when you think of Todd Helton, what comes to mind first when you think of him and just him as a player in his career?
I mean, for me, it's the consistency. It's everything that you would want to teach a baseball player as a young baseball player growing up. Everything Todd Helton did was how I wanted to play baseball. Offense was always my biggest focus as a baseball player. I loved hitting more than anything, and that continues to this day. I love the art of hitting more than just about anything in sports. I am so fascinated by it. So when I think Todd Helton, yes, there's specific memories, of course, and Rocktober will be something I think we'll for certainly talk about, but it's just watching Todd Helton foul off 7 pitches and then hit a double. It's watching Todd Helton take pitches on the out perfectly right on the outside corner in a 2-2 count and not breathe a sigh of relief, but is confident that he knows he understood the zone. He was able to do just so much, mixed in with the fact that, and I actually just mentioned this on a recent episode of my pod. I think first base defense is underrated. The Rockies established themselves as elite infield defender developers, mostly because they never had to worry about issues at first base. What have we talked about since Todd Helton has retired? Who's going to play first base? Look at how important it was to have not only a great player at first base, a Hall of Famer at first base. And yes, the injuries and whatnot and all that stuff, but it didn't matter. Every single time Todd Helton was on the field, the Rockies were better for it, even in the later stages of his career, even because he was still hitting doubles. I mean, I sprinted down my dorm room, the hallways of my dorm room after he hit that pitch against whoever it was there for the Red Sox in his final home game. There's so many moments, but when I think Todd Helton, it's just professional. Every single thing he did was professional, from hitting to everything, and mixed with the fact that he had more personality, but you had to know. And then you kind of got to see a little bit more Todd. So that's what I think about when I think about Todd Helton.
It's pretty good. Coming off who was it, Jake Peavy in that final home game?
Right.
Chef's kiss. How about
he
you,
almost
Evan?
had another one, right? I mean, he almost had
Yeah.
2. He hit like one, a double, like off the top of the wall. Like, I mean, it's just, there's just so many things that I wish we could take from Todd Helton and push it and Space Jam into the 2024 Colorado Rockies. I mean, there's so much of Todd Helton's game that if you could transfer it to some of these players, it would make a world of difference for him.
Yeah, most definitely. The struggles they've had to replace Todd Helton at first base is reminiscent of his buddy Peyton Manning with the Broncos. It's just weird. This key position, Hall of Famer, it's been tough for him to replace. How about you, Evan?
It's funny because I talked about it on our live show we did yesterday, and I've talked about it's like I'm 100% going to cry during this induction ceremony. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening and just thinking about like Todd Helton and being like, it's like starting to tear up. It's funny to me. I'm starting off a little bit more abstract in terms of thinking than Paul. The numbers, the importance of it is that for me, Todd Helton was always there. Every game, every time. As a kid, I started being a Rockies fan just before Todd Helton made his debut. But when I really, really started getting into baseball in a big way, that was when Todd Helton was there. And Todd Helton continued to be there, playing in almost every game of every season for basically my entire childhood until 2008, which was the year before I graduated high school. So, the first 10 years of my really true hardcore baseball fandom, Todd Helton was always there and such a key figure of that. And yeah, you can talk about his professional at bats and his incredible glove and his ability to hit doubles, but it's just the fact that was an ever present Colorado Rocky, and that's why you think of him as Mr. Rocky more so than any other player that's ever played for this team. The only player who's played 17 seasons with the Colorado Rockies, the longest tenured Rocky. Most other long tenured Rockies are really only like 10 some seasons, and yet Todd Helton was there, never traded, never left, had injuries but never missed a season. And I think that makes Todd extra meaningful to not just myself, but a lot of Rockies fans, because he was the ever-present Colorado Rocky growing up.
He was the guy. He was always the guy. Like you're saying, like no matter how bad the Rockies were, or like the names that they didn't really have after the Bombers, especially, like you always went to Coors Field and you were gonna see Todd. Like you didn't matter who else you were gonna see. Todd Helton was gonna do something, and he was gonna do something great. And I think we can safely say it. No one's going to play 17 straight seasons for the Colorado Rockies ever again. Right? Like, I mean, there's no, unless the team completely changes and becomes a place where people want to stay and establish. That was Evan. He wanted to stay. That was the other thing too. There was the Boston trade rumors and all that stuff, but and I'm not super familiar, but I don't think he necessarily wanted to go. I think at its core, he wanted to be Mr. Rocky.
Mm-hmm. A lot of with that is his commitment to the team, where it's just, I think, the kind of guy he is, where he started a job here and he wanted to finish it. And I always love that quote where he's saying it would mean more to win a World Series, to win here than anywhere else. And kind of like what you guys are saying is it means a lot to us. And there's some significance that he's also going in with Joe Mauer, who also spent his entire career with one team. No, it's a dying breed these days of a guy spending his entire career with one team
and not taking the opportunity, even when asked, to go ring chase. Because you think about other great Colorado Rockies, Larry Walker in the final years of his career, he wants to go and win, and the team wants to do right by him and give this older player in the twilight of his career the chance to go chase a ring. And you don't really have that with any of these other like really famous Rockies. Yeah, Vinny finished his career with the Rockies, but he bounced around a little bit. And the only other guy who's really similar, and of course we love him, but he's nowhere near the caliber of player that Todd Helton was, and he's probably never going to be a Hall of Famer, is Charlie Blackmon, where it's kind of apparent that they've offered to him, hey man, you want to go chase a ring? This could be your last year. And he goes, no, I want to stay here. Mm-hmm. And that was what was so important about Todd. Like you said, it's more meaningful to play here and try and win here than it would be to win somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And for a fan base that suffered through a lot of years of bad baseball and bad ownership, mismanagement, poor decisions, to have a ride or die player like that, so huge.
Mm-hmm. And it legitimizes the fan base a little bit as well. Like because who are you rooting for? Who are you watching with the Rockies? Well, I'm watching Todd Helton, a Hall of Fame. Like now, this weekend, we get to say, without a doubt, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, one of the greatest first basemen of all time, played for the Colorado Rockies, and he played 17 straight seasons with them, leading to, again, we're all homers here, but Rocktober is a criminally underrated sports story. It is one of the greatest sporting things to ever happen, and it just because it doesn't end, because of the way the story ends, it completely negates the fact that what the Rockies did, headlined by Todd Helton. Mind you, you can say what you want about the Rockies getting swept, but when Todd Helton got to his first World Series, he wasn't missing out. Didn't he bat like 300 in that series or something like that? He was prepared for every moment, even without the experience of other people. We talk about these October legends and all this stuff, right? But the thing that's so interesting with the Rockies, especially when you think about them, is with their limited October exposure, what does that mean in the big lights? It didn't matter to Todd Helton, because what 2007 showed to me especially was, if Todd Helton did go to another team, he would be there would be no other ToddFather. I can tell you that much. Todd Frazier would never even get to come close to having that. Todd Helton would become much more of a household name, and the Rockies would be in an even more difficult spot with their fans than they are now. Todd Helton built this generation of Rockies fan. I mean, at least was a key part, because all of us now are this generation of Rockies fans that are, growing up and sticking with what we grew up with. And now we're the ones that are trying to hand it down. And it's kind of tough right now because the Rockies don't have someone that is Todd Helton caliber. I mean, it's going to be a long time until the Rockies have another Hall of Famer. So we can't take for granted that we got to watch 17 seasons of one of the greatest players to do it.
Yeah. And Dustin, who's an OG from day one, Rockies fan. Tell me a little bit about, as you're young teenager, like young kid. No, you're 11, 12, getting up there in your teen years. Now, when Todd Helton kind of makes his debut, what was it like, that transition for you from, we had the big cat at first base and now it's this Todd Helton kid that we drafted? What was that like in your first impressions watching Todd in those early
Well, it's
days?
like when he jumps onto the scene and he hits a home run in his first game, you're dang. And then it was consistency every year of batting 300, of hitting 30 doubles and 40 doubles, 52 or whatever. It was just consistency year after year, that you knew at first base we had an over 300 hitter, Gold Glove defense, and was going to carry the team. And I always wish that I was left-handed and I would mock his batting stance, the more upper, the fresh Todd Helton standing straight up, and it was just, he was so confident up at the plate. And I always wished I could do that. I struggled at hitting. I hated hitting. That's why I was a pitcher. But watching Todd Helton in that approach, and in the field, he was never phased, and we went through the baby-faced Helton and Todd and the toddlers, and he grows the goatee out, and he still, even when his body was falling apart, the competitiveness, the fierceness in him is something that I always wanted to have as a baseball player. And like I've said this before, one of the times that I met a celebrity and was starstruck is when I met Todd Helton at spring training. And like we said, we saw the baseball guy, but we never really got to see the person of Todd Helton, the Rockies commercial of the ToddFather Helton, that funny guy with the jokes, and just how kind of a guy he was. I was the first guy in the line, and somebody grabs my shoulder. Who's grabbing me? So I'm ready to square and punch somebody, and it's Todd Helton, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Todd Helton." I'm like, "Yes, sir." But it's one of I was like, "Wow, this guy just saw a bunch of college players, came over. Nobody said, 'Hey, Todd, go say hi to those guys.' He came over and shook everybody's hand, and stopped and talked to us." And so for me, that was, I was 22, 23, 22 at the time. And I was like, wow, this is a major leaguer. This is my childhood Rockies hero, live and in person. I shook his hand and treated me just like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what, that's what he means to me. He was that guy. I want to be like him, the way I went about baseball.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot to like. And if you're just joining us here on Every Rocky Ever, joined here with my brother Dustin, my regular co-host, along with special guests Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies and Evan Lang from Rocky Mountain Rooftop and Purple Row. We're talking Todd Helton, Hall of Fame induction. And the big thing for me, and you can look at his stats and touch on what Dustin was talking about, the consistency throughout his career by how this man could hit. Counting of 17 years in his career, only 5 he failed to hit 300. 300 batting average.
Skyler, not only that, I'm looking at his stats too, right? Because I think people get it. I think because even myself, I'm like, man, Todd Helton was hampered by those injuries. It really got in the way. Todd Helton played under 100 games twice, not counting his rookie season. He played 124 games in his final season. He played 124 games in 2011, 118. So think about that in today's game. I mean, we're begging Chris Bryant to play 100 games this year. Like that's what we were talking about. That's what us three were talking about before the season started. And we're worried about Todd Helton's injury health. But to dive even further, and let's put the caveat, the game is a lot different nowadays. But Todd Helton struck out 100 times once. How many Rockies are already at 100 plus strikeouts at the halfway point of this season?
Do you really want the answer to that question?
No, I don't either. To be totally honest. But he walked triple-digit times 5 times, and still even in those injury things, he's still drawing 50 plus walks, almost 40 walks, and he drew almost 40 walks in 70 games that he played, or 69 games he played in an injury-ridden 2012. Like, you can cores all you want, but you can't argue with that right there, man. That when we're talking about what makes him special, it's because he is a player that the Rockies are dying for right now. He's a person that the Rockies would that anyone in baseball obviously would kill for. And I know the pitching is different. I do know that that's a different. It is a different game, but it's just like, you know, you go and you talk about the whole conversation of how long it took, Larry and Todd to get in the hall. But it's like, look at these numbers, man. I'm looking at 127 walks to 72 strikeouts while batting 347, 469, and slugging 620 with an OPS of 1.088. Like I can't even fathom that in the modern day of baseball. And I think another thing that we haven't touched on, Todd Helton was doing this in the steroid era, never tagged to he got more crap for cores than others got for steroid use. And I'm a steroid guy in the hall guy. I'm that's fine. You still have to be a good ball player to be good. Steroids don't do everything. But like, when you actually unravel the story of Todd Helton and the legacy of Todd Helton, you realize, holy cow, one of the best in the business was playing first base for the Colorado Rockies for years.
And I think a big part of that, Dustin, is, and I'll Paul and I'll throw this to Dustin, is what kind of hitter was Todd Helton? You know, it wasn't a slugging home run hitter. You know, that wasn't what he was all about.
He's shooting at the gaps all day, every day. And that's like, he was never afraid to go opposite field. And in today's game, it's all pull happy. Every single guy. And Todd was not afraid to take a pitch the other way. At any point of the game, he would put a good swing on, no matter what.
Yeah, and I think that approach is what helps him on the road. And Evans always get on stats here. But he wasn't too, as much as we talk about Coors Field, and that was always the hamper against him. Oh, he plays at Coors Field. That's the only reason he's a good hitter. Wasn't too shabby on the road for his career, Evan.
Yeah, Todd Helton's numbers on the road are better than some Hall of Famers in their entire career. They're like, oh, it's all Coors. Yes, his Coors numbers are inflated. So is, first of all, almost every player's home run numbers, or not home run numbers, hitting numbers at home. Because that's just kind of how it works for most players.
Yeah.
But yeah, Coors Field in the pre-Humidor era is going to lead to some stat inflation. But on the road, he hit 287, 386, 469. He, still drew tons of walks. He struck out, a little bit more on the road, but not a ton to be like, oh, he's just flailing on the road. No, of course not. Still hit 142 home runs on the road, still at 271 doubles on the road. He was just so good. And it's so frustrating that for so long, people just denied him of being a product of Coors. And I think it denied the baseball world as a whole his greatness, because I go back and I think about, he should have been the MVP in 2000.
Yeah.
He led the league in basically every discernible category. He was truly incredible, and he didn't win.
147 RBI that season.
He didn't even finish in the top 3. He led basically all MVP candidates in WAR. He led the league in hits, in RBI, batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS. He was so good that year. And instead it went to Jeff Kent,
who isn't even in the Hall of Fame,
who probably will never be in the Hall of Fame, even by the veteran vote. And there's some names on here. It's like, yeah, I kind of get it just because of the name recognition. You got Barry Bonds, you got Mike Piazza. He finished behind Jim Edmonds in MVP voting.
Yeah, and that went to a lot of it, and we'll definitely get into some of those prime years. So I think a part of it is just the Rockies in general, how the Rockies were, they haven't really ever been a good team. That's what made 2007, 2009 so special, because it was like a good team for Todd Helton finally. But he played through some garbage years, tough years where the pitching's awful and he's not really supported by an offense in transition. Like, he had some good performances in there, and whatever offense they did have was negated by terrible pitching and pre-Humidor era and a little bit in the post-Humidor. I think that also made it easy to overlook him. Like, he's this guy playing out in Colorado at Coors Field. He's playing on the moon on this garbage team. Who cares? He doesn't really deserve an MVP because his team's terrible. Which I think nowadays, a lot of people are a lot better at that, where they vote for the player and not necessarily what did the rest of his team do. But yeah, you can see that frustration of, he felt like we can look at all these numbers and how was he not celebrated more in his career? He got into the Hall of Fame a lot quicker than Larry Walker, thankfully.
But he's not celebrated because the Rockies have failed at building a brand, building an identity other than being a laughingstock team that plays on the moon. What do we hear every single time at the winter meetings? Oh, the Rockies aren't doing it, and they didn't have the succession plan for a post Todd Helton world that had a playoff run in there and a potential playoff runs there. At the tail end of that, they didn't have the continued. It was the Ian Desmond approach. It was the Daniel Murphy again. Let's do this. The Rockies didn't learn from Todd Helton. They regressed after Todd Helton. I think the evaluation of the first base position, especially by the Rockies ownership in the post Helton era, has been mostly abysmal.
I don't think it's fair to blame. Yes, the Rockies have made a lot of mistakes, but I think to blame the Rockies for the national baseball audience not appreciating the greatness of Todd Helton is a little overblown. I want to go back to 2000 again. You know how good Todd Helton was on the road in 2000?
I'm sure really good.
He had an OPS of 1.074.
Whew.
He hit 353 with an on-base percentage of 441. But the national baseball media didn't care. And it's not because the Rockies are incompetent. They were still in their kind of infancy back then. They were under 10 years old as a franchise. But it's because, and this continues to this day, the national baseball media, the national baseball audience is largely focused on your big market, crazy superstar teams. And an incredibly talented hitter from the University of Tennessee on a under 10-year-old expansion team in the Rocky Mountains is not something that people were going to write about in the year 2000.
Yeah. Or like, oh, he has a good month. He wins player of the month. That's nice. And then move on from there. But I think that's the thing about that Paul's getting to is the Rockies themselves just not really knowing how to expand out, and they're just kind of stuck in their own little world. They don't know how to build
around. I think that's just been the issue in the brief blips that they have had of a foundation of an opportunity. I mean, just like we're talking all this greatness of Todd, but there is the unfortunate nature of most of Todd Helton's career was played on losing and irrelevant baseball. Like when you really break it down, like that's one of the big detractors, I think. But that's the fault of the Rockies for, again, they were young, but unfortunately the seeds were being set that early of what we're seeing now, and different ownership at that time, right? Too. When did the Monforts take over?
They took over fully in 2005. Yeah.
So still, there's obviously, it's not 1-to-1. But it is. I just think that it was an early warning sign for the Rockies and their issues with building, making themselves a name in the national media, because you're right. It's definitely tough, and especially in baseball. I mean, oh my goodness! And in the early 2000s, like how could you get anyone not to talk about the Yankees or something like that? So all that it totally makes sense. But it's also just like, I think another example where it's just kind of tough for me to just fully believe that the Rockies were fully buying into what they had and building around and knowing what they had and being able to build around it. But you're right, Evan. It certainly you can't say it's not one for one.
Mm-hmm. And something else I want to bring up, because you mentioned is like, yeah, Todd Helton spent a lot of years as a good player on bad and losing teams. But you know what? So have a lot of Hall of Famers. And that's kind of what makes it more criminal that it took him so long to get in. It took him so long to get his recognition. You know who never won a World Series? Joe Mauer, Adrian Beltre.
Mm-hmm. And Joe Mauer's on the Twins. You know, I think a similar story there.
The Twins were bad in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. And who baseball in Minnesota, like, okay. Like I think what's nice and what's good about these weekends though is there is no option. If you're gonna watch the Hall of Fame coverage, I mean, yes, you can tune away, but if your goal is to consume and enjoy, you like to watch the celebration of the Hall of Famers every year, you are going to have to. Here's the story. Here is Todd. You can't, and same for Joe. I think that's another great point where it's just like. Greatness exists outside of your Yankees logo, your Mets logo, your Red Sox logo. It's like, and it's on you, the baseball fan. It truly is, because I'll admit it. I can't name 3 people on the Red Sox roster, you know, realistically right now, or like get into the minutia of those teams, because I only have so much baseball brain and I got to talk about the Rockies all the time that my focus is there. So I can kind of see that. But if you want to appreciate greatness in baseball, you have to be willing to seek it out and embrace it. Shohei Ohtani is the greatest baseball player we've ever seen because he's a Dodger. I know it sucks. We have to admit it. But what he does is incredible. Like, I'm not going to sit here and knock greatness when I'm watching it, because I don't like the fact that they play at altitude or they play at a team that isn't relevant. It is just a frustrating thing about baseball, especially, that those biases really impact the legacy and reputation of people like Todd Helton.
Yeah. And that's why we have the show here on Every Rocky Ever, talking about these guys and celebrating careers. And there's been plenty that Dustin and I have talked about on here, guys that deserve more recognition. And it's our goal here today. Keep talking about Todd Helton. And so we'll keep focusing back in here. It's a nice little segue, though. I like that little sidetrack train that we went on. But focusing back here on Todd, here in his career, we can get to some of the moments and highlights of his career that you guys can think of and whatnot. But while you think of that for a second, I'm just going to run through some of these accolades that he got. Also in 1998, came in second in Rookie of the Year, which is criminal. If What's-His-Face hadn't had that 20 strikeout game, he probably wins it.
Kerry Wood. One game got him the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. But an incredible year there in 1998. I think that probably helped people swallow, like, the big cat's not here anymore. Hey, this Helton guy's pretty good. Hey, that's pretty good. But he goes on to be named to 5 consecutive All-Star games from 2000 to 2004, which are his prime years. He was a Silver Slugger in 4 of those seasons and won 3 Gold Gloves from 2000 to 2004, and then finished top 10 in MVP voting 3 times, and top 10 3 times during that stretch in his career. Had a 16th place there in 2004, came in 19th in 2002, 13th place MVP voting there in 2009. Like, as a 35-year-old, Todd Helton was pretty solid on that 2009 team, helping him to the best season in Rockies history. But you look at these accolades, and we can narrow it down here to that stretch. That prime stretch of Todd Helton is probably some of the best baseball, like we're saying, best baseball played by anybody in history. One of those great primes where, like we were saying before, you just expected him to do something when he got up to the plate.
Video game numbers. I mean, walked more than he struck out in 2002 and 2003 and 2004, I believe, all walking more. I mean, it's insane. the moments really for me, you have to start with the biggest one. If there is not a statue of Todd Helton throwing his hands up into the sky after clinching the first World Series berth in franchise history, then what are we doing? That moment, I was there. I was luckily enough to be at that game. I had Game 5 World Series tickets, unfortunately. But I can hear the crowd still. I can remember the look on my face on my friends' faces there, and it's forever immortalized by a Colorado sports legend being the front page of the Denver Post, a guy that has given everything to his team to get there. And it's just like, I know that's the big one to start, but like, it's goosebumps every time, man. Like and it's because that moment doesn't happen without Todd. You don't have Rocktober. Let's rewind the clock. That the walk-off home run against the Dodgers pitcher there, who was nasty
Saito.
that year. Yeah,
Saito.
that starts literally the Rocktober run. Every single big moment for those 17 years, there's a trail that leads back to Todd Helton. But I think we got to start with that one. I don't think that there is any more special moment than that, because it was holy cow. Like, I mean, the story continues. And I don't know what it was like for you guys, but I got to watch Rockies games, the playoff games in class. Like, my teachers just said, nope, like, here we go. It's a day game. They're playing the Phillies. We're going to watch it. Rocktober is something I literally dream of. I crave that experience as a sports fan. So for me, I think when we're talking moments, I hate to start with the best, but it doesn't get much better than that.
This is true. How about you, Evan?
It's tough. I think one of the more, I don't want to say underrated, but I feel like it gets overshadowed, is his 3 home run game against the Expos in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of that massive campaign of being truly incredible. And just what a good hitter Todd Helton was, that although he wasn't like a prototypical power hitter, he could still knock him out with the best of them.
Because it turns out when you just have a good plate approach and you connect with and are good at connecting with the ball, the power will come.
Right.
It turns out. We allude to 2000. We have had this pennant for my whole life. It's been hanging in this room.
There you go.
And
look at that.
Look at that baby face Todd Helton, 2000 L batting
That looks
champ.
nothing like Todd Helton, man.
What are you talking about? That's perfect.
Awesome.
When this baby face Helton.
Man, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so weird watching him run around in those old videos with no beard. Because I'm young in those years. Like, those are formative years where it's like, for me, like, if I'm going to put the picture of Todd Helton in the dictionary, it's the beer, it's Mountain Man Todd. It is that version for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally the opposite. Mine is the baby face Helton that Skylar would know. I'd always be like, when's he going to shave? Shave that off already. He's not hitting like he used to. Shave it off. So I was like, it drove me nuts, but whatever works for him. But like you guys said, those ones of same thing, getting goosebumps and seeing Todd arms up in the air, but then his little, I don't know, his like pony gallop to the center of the field. I don't know, like nobody knew what to do, so it was this weird little hop around kind of thing. But it was, I think, some of the other things. One that always sticks out to me is towards the end of his career, Roy Oswald's pitching against the Cardinals, and he pulls the hidden ball trick.
Legend.
That's perfect. That's a ball player right there.
Roy
That's
Oswald, Colorado Rockies legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, every Rocky ever.
And wasn't that a thing on that one? Todd Helton's like, yeah, it's been something I've always wanted to do, and we had it in the bag, just in case, and it finally panned out. Take that, Matt Carpenter. But I think that was nice. And a couple of these moments that we've talked about is those rare instances where you got to see Todd Helton, he was very stoic and like professional in the field. He took care of business, that nice professional ball player. But those small instances when you get to see him of how much he loves and cares about the game, where he's hitting a walk-off home run and he's sprinting around the base paths. He's jumping into the group. We always think back to that documentary that they used to have, the 21 Days. I think you can find it on YouTube. That goes through the Rocktober thing that the Rockies produced. And it's a lot of those young players, Spielborgs, Tulo, those guys, like, we didn't know how to act until we saw Todd and what his reaction was. And then we knew it was okay that they could celebrate and go crazy, because Todd was that leader and they finally saw him like let loose in a sense. And it gave them permission, like, all right. And they can go nuts. So it's these cool moments like that you can see of the dude cared about the game. He loved baseball. He loves baseball.
Never stopped loving baseball. And it's so funny to me because we always, Todd is such a stoic guy, but then there are so many stories from guys that shared the clubhouse from him. Jack Corrigan will always talk about these if you ask him, of like, you would never expect it, but Todd Helton being a bit of a prankster, like doing like practical jokes and telling jokes, and a funny and fun loving guy. But it's not a persona that he ever really presented outside of, the innermost circle.
Mm-hmm. And like we get those glimpses when he's at Coors Field and he hops in the booth, either on the radio or on the TV broadcast. You can hear him. He's making fun of Drew and Huey. He's making fun of Spilly. He's cracking jokes, making fun of himself, self-deprecating. That dry sense of humor, and I think this is a good segue into Dustin and I love the Rockies commercials, the old ones.
Oh yeah.
And Todd was in a couple of pretty good ones when they were still doing those. I think one for a lot of people is when he's going through the having trouble getting through the airport security, the metal detector.
That should be his intro video for his Hall of Fame, because just a reminder. I think everyone, if you put them all there so everyone could see all the hardware he won in his career.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. There was the one where he does the mound visit for the wedding and comes up and talks to the guy that's getting married, and it's getting nervous. We need to call him the best man.
Of course, the ToddFather one where he set up, and then the classic "What the heck's a Twitter?" The long-standing "What the heck's a Twitter?" What's that? Is that Dexter Fowler in that commercial?
Yeah.
that is a baby face, sexy Dexy.
That is, wow.
Right now, I'm just chilling with Todd. You're a rookie. Who cares what you're doing?
I miss those ads so much.
And they could do them again. They're long overdue to do those. They got like Chuck would be perfect for those. Like, it seems like they got some personalities on the team. They could have some fun with it.
One of my absolute favorite, and I think that's like this one too. It's when Cargo's going through the clubhouse, just rambling in Spanish, and he comes up and just goes into this long Spanish tirade to Todd Helton, who's just sitting there stoically staring at him, just like, Like Spilly's there making a weird face, all confused. And then Todd reaches up, grabs the nail clippers, hands them to Cargo. He's like, gracias, amigo, and walks off. And Todd's like, what? It's just the idea that Todd Helton just understands this Spanish completely and just hands him this nail clippers. So good.
Full of surprises, that Todd Helton.
Yeah, that one's so good. It's always a good one. Or there's the one where he's hitting BP. It's like that one's got Dinger written all over it, and it hits Dinger out in the stands. That's right. Those nice little instances where you can see, like, Todd Helton's a pretty funny dude. There's just a interesting behind the scenes, and if you've never read it's Drew Goodman's book that he wrote. Somebody's like, If These Walls Could Talk, and it has a bunch of stories of his time as a broadcaster and around the team. And there's a chapter, a section dedicated to Helton and talking about like his superstitious nature as a player, where I think one day it was either Tiny or the trainer, somebody, there in the clubhouse, they did something like Helton had hit them a couple times, punched them 3 times, just playfully punching them 3 times. Well, Todd goes 3 for 3 that night. Perfect night at the plate. Well, what does he do the next day? He's punching this guy 3 times. Yep.
Until it stopped working, I'm sure.
Goes until it stops working. I think he finally goes 0 for 3, and the guy in the clubhouse is thankful. He's like, I'm starting to get bruised a bit. He's punching me in the gut.
Oh man.
Those little superstitious things, because we know Larry Walker is the super superstitious one with the number 3 and everything. But Todd, that hardball, that baseballer for life, that lifer, I'm sure there's a lot more that we don't know about of his weird little superstitions.
Well, then it also shows too is all the hard work that he put in. There was recently, I think Patrick Saunders for the Denver Post had a really good write up about the post baseball career, like the stage, these important figures in his life, and just how much he worked at being a good hitter, and working the opposite field ever since he was a little kid, and how much, if he was struggling, it was even more hard work, and the superstitions are part of it. I think we all have these little quirks and things that we do, maybe even before recording an episode of something. We go through this routine to feel prepared, and then if it doesn't work, we're okay. I got to refigure all this, but it's that dedication to perfect his art, and that's what it was for 17 years. Of how many extra batting practices did he have? How many times was he so wound up on himself? You got to put that pitch this way. You've got to do this. You have got to pick that baseball for the double play or whatever, because he had guys in the infield and that was always the one thing. I think when Albert Pujols came onto the scene, it kind of stole a lot of Todd Helton's thunder, because now it was this guy for the Cardinals hit home runs and he's so wonderful. I hold a lot against Albert Pujols just because of that. That Todd Helton didn't get more Gold Gloves because Albert Pujols or whoever, and he was so good. And I always, that perfect combination of him and Tulo. I think that was those dudes right there. Garrett Atkins, not the greatest of third basemen, but oh man, just all of them, and Todd there at first base to vacuum everything up, and he made it look smooth. It was never a frantic. That like we said, post Helton, the Rockies have not found a first baseman. They were trying to find replacements. Was it Kazansky and Ben Paulson? Oh man, it was just nothing there. And then afterwards were, Reynolds, and we got Justin Morneau for a season, and we've just never been able to again develop a first baseman. Like we didn't really develop Todd Helton. He was already legit, and we boosted him up quick, and ever since then it's let's juggle these guys for a while and see what happens. And I think
you look back and you think the infield defense that Todd played with for most of his career, and you know what, it wasn't very, like, the individuals are not very good when you look at that list. So like, shortstops, Nafi Perez, who was really only ever good with the Rockies and was so bad with some other teams that some beat writer developed the Nafi Perez rule that it's better your team actively gets worse just by Nafi Perez being there. That's on Baseball Reference. I still think like it's rough. And then you've got, the Rockies never really had their career second baseman for most of their existence. Like they had a couple of years of Clint Barmas, but it was a different guy basically every year for most of Todd Helton's career until DJ LeMahieu showed up. Third baseman, you've got some solid guys, but never really a true elite hot corner defender. Vinny was okay. Jeff Cirillo was okay. Gary Atkins was okay. But then the thing that brought it all together and made it work was Todd Helton.
Yeah. Because he had, and you think of the breadth of players that he's played with over 17 years, where there in 2013, he's got Nolan Arenado over at third base that he's playing with, and Troy Tulowitzki over at short. No, and a good first baseman. First base defense is still underrated in the world of baseball. They just want a guy over there who can maybe catch the ball and hit dingers. No, I think a lot of teams have learned, no, you need a good first baseman makes your infield better, because it enables those Tulowitzkis to go those dives in the hole and jump, throw across the diamond, scoop it in the dirt, because Todd Helton's there to vacuum it up and get you an out. And then how many gold gloves has Todd Helton won by association, you think, in his career?
Yep.
Just being there at first base, how many infielders who have either just played with him or played with him a bit and went somewhere else, maybe won a gold glove, how many of them got better because, man, Todd Helton's there at first base. He's making me better. It's really special what he did. I think that points to what his leadership, the quiet leader for the Rockies, what the impact he had on the organization and his fellow teammates that maybe we didn't see, but what he was like in the clubhouse, sitting and talking with guys and helping them and mentor guys along the way. There's a lot we don't know, but you can see with him on the field and other guys he played with.
I'll tell you a gold glove that Todd won by association. It's the Nafy Perez's lone gold glove in 2000.
There you go. So we can put an asterisk. We'll put in a submission to Baseball Reference to give him another gold glove.
Yep. We have to now.
It feels like I'm being mean to Nafy because you know what? I actually really like Nafy Perez as a kid, but like he was, as a defender, cromulent at best. And he was never really able to find good hitting success outside of Colorado. But it's another just factor of Todd Helton just elevating those around him. And that's what a really good player does.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Especially first base. I just that emphasizes it is why these players are better. You mentioned it's Tulo feels more confident going for that ball because he knows he can make a throw. And it might not be the best throw, but if he can get it in Todd Helton's radius, his atmosphere, his orbit, basically, he'll more often than not make a play. Like, I mean, I closed the stats. I mean, I'm sure his errors. I mean, he's got to be over 980 career fielding percentage, I would imagine.
996.
So he's committed like 5 errors in 17 seasons with that percentage. I mean, that matters. That's that's a bang bang play at first base that gets a double play in a crucial situation. That's helping Ubaldo Jimenez get a no hitter. I mean, that type of stuff matters. Like it really truly matters to have someone like that and to have that consistency for so long, knowing. It's so, like you mentioned quarterback, Skylar, right? I mean, it's so nice when you don't have to worry about that. You know what I mean? When you don't have to worry about it at all. You have your team leader, you have that guy, you have someone that's great. And it just takes a huge relief off as the Rockies, are looking for these people that can be those stalwarts. Ezekiel Tovar's kind of got the bubblings, and Charlie Blackmon's been the stalwart right fielder for, his career. But that's what that stuff really, really, really matters, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So fielding percentage by first baseman, Todd Helton is number 8 on Baseball Reference's list, and he wallops them all in innings played at first base to the point where you might as well kind of ignore it because he's got so many more innings than them. Because
that's crazy.
In front of Todd Helton in terms of overall fielding percentage with his .9962 is going all the way to number 1, Joe Mauer, Mark Teixeira, Travis Lee, Paul Goldschmidt, Kevin Youkilis, and Casey Kochman. Oh, and I forgot number 7, Doug Mientkowicz.
Of course, old Dougie.
And one thing that I'll mention here is the transition here for a second on defense. I don't know of anybody that could crash on a bunt better than Todd Helton at first base during his era. The man's basically in their back pocket by the time the pitch is thrown when he sees that bunt coming around. And growing up playing corner infield or at third base, in my mind, I just always thought, when you see a bunt, you're crashing hard to make a play. And Todd Helton, no fear. They throw that pitch and boom, he's like right there. I think that Simpsons reference, remember with Isotopes game, it's Babe Ruth the fourth, and he's pointing in the stands, and he's pointing down. He's like, indicating a bunt. And he bunts it, and the guys are right there, grab it and tag him. That was Todd Helton every time he saw a bunt.
And looking at, I'm bringing this back in because I'm still kind of hung up on this. Todd Helton also has some of the most innings played of any first baseman in just ever. And almost everyone ahead of him has a tremendously worse fielding percentage than he did. You up there, at least you got a couple guys who have got a .99 something, but you got some guys who have like a .97 or lower. And the only guy who's kind of close, ironically enough, who has just a couple more innings than Todd and a slightly worse fielding percentage is Mark Grace, who Todd Helton admired when he was coming into the league. And that's just kind of a cool one for one of the, it was said that Todd Helton picked number 17 for his big league jersey because it's what Mark Grace wore. Because Todd never really had a consistent jersey number in from college and going through the minors. He wore a ton of different things. He wore 3 in college. He wore 22 with the Sky Sox. I think he wore 13 with New Haven. But I think that's just really neat.
Mm-hmm. That is very that's the beauty of sport right there. That's one of those weird sports storylines that comes together right there. That's a cool fact right there, Evan.
And we could spend so much more time talking about all kinds of stuff, but we can go as long as we want, really. But we'll still try to keep it within reason. One more offensive thing that I want to talk about, and then we can talk about the actual going into the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. But we have to talk about hitting doubles because he is Mr. Double. When he wasn't hitting a home run, it was really him hitting doubles that he took pride in, shooting the gaps, like Dustin said. And I think it was so fitting that his 25th 100 career hit was a double.
Yep.
The opposite way down the line at Coors Field, and he sneaks in to second base. I think it was against the Reds. I think Brandon Phillips was there at second base to make the tag.
Bang bang play there at second. It was a close play there at second base. So
but the fact that he was Mr. Double, and like what he's in 26th all time in doubles. He's up there in doubles.
20th.
Yeah. He's in the top 20.
And one of the best doubles hitters of the modern era.
Yeah. In 2000, he had 59 doubles. The next year, he had 54 doubles. He's setting records for how many extra base hits and specifically doubles that he's had over a stretch. Also, Freddie Freeman in 2023 was approaching. Did he get to 59 doubles? Can't remember with Freddie last year. But Freddie was getting up there like, we haven't seen this many doubles from a guy in the National League in a while. And you look at the list like, it's because Todd Helton's like at the top of that list in this era.
He did get to 59 on the dot.
There you go.
Stupid Dodgers.
Yeah. But when you think of Todd Helton with hitting, that's what you think of as he's got a double into the gap because he fought off a bunch of pitches, gets one, and muscles it into the gap, and he's into second base. And this is a dude who didn't really run well throughout his career. 37 stolen bases in his career. Got caught 29 times. So he wasn't exactly burning rubber. 37 triples, but 592 doubles in his career to go along with 369 homers. And he had 2,519 hits. Those doubles carried a lot.
I do kind of wish he had 2 less hits just so he got 25-17.
I wish he had just hit 8 more doubles.
What was crazy is when we look, and he did that in 9,453 plate appearances. And when you look at those guys on the top doubles list, they had over 10,000. It was close to 1,100 or 11,000 plate appearances to get 700 doubles, and Todd got his amount in that few plate appearances. And it just shows you that approach, like I said before, not being afraid to go the other way. And he totally took advantage of Coors Field, of course, with the huge outfield and shooting it in the gaps. No matter what, you can't go wrong. And that's how in some of those 147 RBI
Crazy.
in 2000, none of the Rockies even sniff 80 nowadays. And he had 147, and it was always a staple. Pencil it in, that 2000 for 99, even 98. He had 97 as a rookie, and it was always 100 plus, 100 plus, 100 plus. And then in those tail years when he wasn't, the main driving force of the offense, he was still 80, 90, up and around there.
And he did it on, it's a 2-2 count. It's a pitch that's low and away. He fights it off. It's like you watch and you're like, how the hell did he hit that ball that hard and that far? It doesn't make any sense. And Dustin, it's what the Rockies need to do. Find the people that know how to exploit Coors Field and let them exploit it. That's the whole point of having home field advantage. With Todd Holden as a weapon at home, when Matt Holliday and Cargo and Tulo and all these guys are so good at home, exploit that, use that, embrace Coors Field like Todd Holden did, and you'll end up a Hall of Famer.
But it's not even like, Todd Helton was a weapon that would drive in runs, but he would be available to score as well because he was pretty much always on base. Todd Helton is one of the best on base percentages of any player of all time. If you pull up the leaderboards, most of the people in front of him are guys from like the 40s and earlier, Negro League players. And you've got a couple modern players like Barry Bonds, Juan Soto, Frank Thomas, and Edgar Martinez. But Todd Helton has the 29th best on-base percentage of all time of any player. In front of guys like, or behind guys like Turkey Stearns and Mickey Cochran and other people who are just, basically the ancient heroes of baseball. And then you've got this guy from the modern era. And you've got like Juan Soto on there, but remember that Juan Soto might not be there at the end of his career.
Right.
Like his on-base percentage is great now, but he's got to keep that up.
In a very difficult, in a league where offense is not nearly as easy to generate as it was in Todd Helton. That's like the one thing you can kind of take away, I guess, when comparing it to the modern game. But it's again, that availability and with the doubles, not only is he on base, he's on second, he's in scoring position. So boom, there's an RBI for who's behind him. There's exactly what that's the formula right there. Todd Helton's offensive performance is the blueprint for success at Coors Field. Be able to hit home runs, but doubles are the best. And run those outfields, because it's going to stink when you're playing 3-game set against the Rockies and Todd Helton's hit 6 doubles against you. By the time he hits double number 6, your outfielders are pretty over it. Like they're pretty done with running at that thing that's in right or left center.
And what's crazy is and according to Baseball Reference's version of WAR, he only had one season in which he had a negative WAR, and that was in 1997 when he played 35 games. Mostly in the outfield, at negative 0.2 B WAR. The rest of his career, it was never negative, even at the tail end when he had 0.1. The things that he did was always contributing positives to his team, whether it was the defense or what he was doing with the bat. He was always being a positive, helping the Rockies win, adding to their ability to win And that's what you want out of a player. That's a Hall of Fame player, of a guy who's always contributing to his team being better and winning games. Not too shabby. But transitioning here, one thing I wanted to touch on, it just speaks to him as a person too. As I remember when he retired, announced his retirement, and we'll transition this into just talking about the Hall of Fame induction here this weekend, is that he announced his retirement in the most Todd Helton way. It's on a Sunday afternoon, late in the season, on the road in Arizona. The Broncos are playing, and just quietly announces, yeah, I'm going to retire at the end of the season in 2013. And, I'm sure a lot of us would have loved in this era where guys have their farewell tours and everything. I think Mariano Rivera was having a farewell tour that year. And he announces, yeah, I'm going to retire at the end of the year, just quietly on a Sunday afternoon in Arizona. And I think that always stuck out to me, is that how much it spoke to Todd Helton as a person. Just a humble guy, doesn't want that attention, doesn't call for the attention, doesn't want people to look at him. But he's like, yeah, I think I'm done. Like, it's time.
It's like farewell tours are great. Todd Helton would have hated it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. The horse and everything was already a bit much, I feel like, for him.
I think he dealt with it because he likes horses. It was like, okay, I get a horse out of this transaction. I'm coming out on top. But like, it's the same. We talked about this with Charlie Blackmon too, of like, we feel like Chuck is probably going to do pretty much the same thing. These guys who in their inner circle, how, out and loud their personalities can be. But to the outside, it's like, he'd hate that kind of big bombastic farewell tour.
Yeah, because you could tell in his final home game, that obviously emotional thing for him, but you could also see he just didn't want it in a way. Just didn't know what to do with being in that scenario and people
I'm
cheering.
Football.
People cheering and giving the standing ovations and all that. I know he appreciated it and loves it, but it puts you in that awkward spot. Just let me hit the ball, man.
Yeah, I'm not saying he wouldn't appreciate the farewell tour. I'm just saying that it would have probably made him wildly uncomfortable.
Also, I will submit alternative for the statue. If we made a statue, instead of him doing the cheering, just put him on a horse. He's just out in front of the stadium on a horse.
No, you got to do that. The Todd Centaur. Yeah, you have to do that one where he's that crazy painting that person made, where he's half horse.
I have successfully driven that from my mind until now.
Now it's gonna be a new background on your computer. That's what I know it's gonna be.
I forgot about that stupid painting.
That would be perfect. But I want to transition here as we come to a close here, is just him getting into the Hall of Fame and just what an accomplishment, and then just really what this whole event. We're recording before we hear the actual speeches when he says there, but just that excitement, what it means to you to see him taking the stand, step up to the podium and be inducted into the Hall of Fame. What does that moment mean to you about that I guess this just event happening?
It legitimizes my fandom. It legitimizes why I wake up and talk about the Rockies every day. It legitimizes my answer of, you're a Rockies fan. And I'm like, yes, I genuinely care about Rockies baseball as a sports fan. And when players, because here's the deal, with a little insight into me, Larry Walker was my first ever favorite athlete. So this combo is going to, and it's going to have to stand the test of time, because, there might be a certain third baseman that might not go in with a Rockies hat on his head at the end of his career. So with it being these two guys, they legitimize everything about me growing up a Rockies fan when they are honored and recognized like this, because it was the greatness and awesomeness that we saw now immortalized for people to see and enjoy. And the story of Rocktober gets to be told more, and the story of the Blake Street Bombers gets to be brought up with Larry. I think that when I really think about this, it isn't just like nostalgia. It's the legitimization of Rockies baseball. I think that it's The Rockies have 2 Hall of Famers. The Rockies have some of the best players to ever do it. Cores be damned. So for me, I think when I really reflect on it, that's what comes to my mind. It's legit. The Rockies have legit players, and there's a legit case to be a Rockies fan.
Pretty good. How'd you guys?
I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry so hard. Like, again, Paul, same. Like, Larry Walker was my first favorite athlete, my first favorite baseball player, but Todd Helton is everything about what it truly means to be a Colorado Rocky. Everything. And my prized possession of the many bits of Rockies memorabilia that I own is a Todd Helton autographed baseball in a little case that was from his 1998 season, where he was basically won the rookie triple crown. He had the best batting average, slugging, like all that jazz for any Rockies player. And that was a present from my dad. And I love my dad very much. And we bonded over baseball. And like, what is that thing? I'm trying to remember. Is it City Slickers, where he's like, no matter what, we could always talk about baseball. And growing up, it was Todd Helton more than any other player. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Todd Helton was always there throughout my entire childhood. Throughout even my adulthood, he's still around. He's still a part of Rockies baseball. And I think there are so many fans out there who don't realize how truly lucky they are, how truly lucky they have been to witness Mr. Rocky. Every team has their Mr. Such and Such, the one guy who is demonstrably the true face more than anyone else will ever be, has been. And that's Todd Helton, a guy who people don't even really remember. He was not the first guy to wear number 17 with this organization. That the guy who was with the inaugural team who wore 17, basically the fact that Dave Need wore 17 has been deleted from the collective memory of Rockies fandom, because when you think 17, you think Todd Helton. 17 seasons, Todd wearing number 17. And honestly, it's been a real rough couple of years for a lot of people in general. And Larry Walker, when he got inducted, I got misty-eyed. Todd Helton, when it got announced that he was in, and we were all just sitting on the edge of our chairs, white knuckling the armrests, and they teased us with, this player played every season with one team. And I'm like, and it was
Joe Mauer. Son of a.
And like, Skylar, I don't know if you remember, it was back when I had to jump on and I recorded just a short video for the YouTube channel. And the glee, the complete mix of emotions, like barely restrained from me. Like, I called a friend and was like, holy crap, dude. It's like, that's how meaningful this is.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Dustin?
Well, that was that same night that we jumped on and recorded together our reactions. I was in Sam's Club with the kids, and I think Skylar too, he's like, fine, it's like he got in, and standing in Sam's Club, teared up, crying, because he was our boy. He was our guy, untouched by anybody else, only Colorado, and he made it. Like Paul says, it legitimized everything about being a Rockies fan, and the joy that he made it, and people can see what we got to see for 17 years. And that's what pumps me up so much, that he made it, that all the blood, sweat, and tears that we all went through, he's there. As a kid, it's like, I'm there with him. Every time I was in the backyard pretending I was Todd Helton, I made it to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
He's our guy. And I think just everything about him, even the post-playing career, the struggles he had, and back. And this is, I think, 4 years sober is in an article that I saw, and he's made it to the Hall of Fame. Like, boom, that's him. And it's super special. I'll probably cry again on Sunday, seeing that go down. And just like I did in game 163, and then when we made it to the World Series, like all those little things, those moments that I shared with Todd, even though I was not there.
No.
Yeah.
But that's
all the times that we heard, Dustin, you and I, Alan Roach do the announcement, do the call. It's like first baseman number 17,
Todd
Helton.
Yeah.
And it's seared into our brains. And we're the lifers here. It's the lifer's dream.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michael Kadire has a pretty good quote here. I found the Denver Post article talking about Helton announcing his retirement. If you're a young player and you don't watch a guy with 2,500 hits, watch how he goes about his business and see what he does and what's made him successful, then you are an idiot.
Cuddy is my buddy. Yeah, and that is something that I've always loved is, we talk about the national media couldn't give two licks about Todd Helton a lot of the time. They cast him aside, they disregard him. But if you got into the weeds and talked to the players in the league of baseball players, coaches, and people that watched him play and played with him or against him, that they celebrated, they knew how great he was. There's a quote here in an article over on Saber. You can at the Saber website. Awesome. But at the very top, Kerry Wood with a quote, "You come to Colorado, the first guy you talk about is Todd Helton. We try to stay down in the zone and not give him anything to hit." They knew how good he was. And I think that's what I always latched onto is you'd hear players and Tony Gwynn, these other greats. They're like, man, that Helton kid, that Helton guy, he was legit. No, he was a good player. You didn't want Todd Helton to beat you in a game. No, he was the guy that they were always talking about. And I think that him getting into the Hall of Fame is that same thing for me. It legitimized everything that we believed about him. We knew he was one of the greatest of all time. But for then these voters to select him, to get him in, and there's a lot of these younger, newer voters that were getting their first goes on. There's a lot of those old guys that we'll forget about them. But 75% at least of baseball writers and guys that grew up and learning more about him, looking at the data now that we have that shows how great he was too. Now it legitimizes a lot for us, and it's just special. And I like that Dust says that these moments we shared with Todd. We've talked about a lot on this show before. Dust and I, a lot of our Rockies experiences growing up is listening to him on the radio, playing these video games. All-Star Baseball 2000 on the Nintendo 64. We'd play that one a lot. Todd Helton. These little moments that we shared and memories that we have. There it is. That is the Larry Walker one. But those little moments that we shared, and it legitimizes it where it was worthwhile. He's got the Larry Walker one too.
Only video game with a Rocky on the cover.
There you go. But it legitimizes it, and it's so special where, like that, something we've all shared. It feels like we've gotten into the Hall of Fame. And Patrick Lyons, I asked him if there's anything he wanted us to share for him in his honor since he wasn't able to make it here. He says that this is really the first real induction ceremony for the Rockies since Larry Walker, because that one was on a random Wednesday and was delayed a bunch because of the pandemic and everything.
Right.
So this one feels like the legitimate one where it's happening when it's supposed to in July, and there's no layover where we have to just sit there and wait. But it's the first real one, which is fitting for Mr. Rocky.
who was, in fact, a real one.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and there's so much more we could have talked about and so much we haven't touched on. But there's tons of stories, home run derbies, other events, moments. But that's the cool thing of this podcast that we like doing is everybody has their different experiences and thoughts. We have all the big moments that we can talk about, but there's those little ones that we talk about too. And a couple on here on Twitter, we did have a couple that mentioned stuff. McKay Bay Beers at AU Rules Football says there's so many memories, but there's just something about driving home from second shift late on the East Coast, listening to XM radio and hearing him hit that home run against the Dodgers to keep that magical 07 playoff push alive. One of those great moments. There was another one that I have to find here where somebody basically says they sold him a CD once at Best Buy in Tennessee, and he was a super nice guy.
What CD we have to know?
Yes, this was Andrew Wiseman, who says, one time I sold him a CD at Best Buy in Knoxville, Tennessee. Nice guy.
Nice.
Those are the moments we live for. So he's not just a Hall of Fame player, but he's a Hall of Fame person. Yeah, so many memories. So many things that we could talk about, and him doing awesome in the playoffs and all kinds of stuff that we don't even have the time to get to. But that's why we still have the community, and people can have those moments and share with one another. You can comment them, share them here with us on the YouTube channel or on social media on X, all that good stuff. But fellas, it's been great. Appreciate you taking the time to hop on with us, Paul and Evan.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
I've been delighted to. And, I was flipping through. I have a little stack of a variety of vintage Rockies cards that I keep on my desk, and I'm flipping through them to try and find a Todd Helton. And ironically, the first one I found was David Need.
Nice.
But it's so funny because, we've gone longer than we normally do on any of our shows. We're at an hour and 22 minutes now, and we could go for an hour and 22 more minutes just talking about Todd Helton.
He's a special guy, man. It's going to be a special weekend for sure. So really appreciate the chance. There we go.
There it is. Baby face.
That's my Todd Helton.
It
right
looks
there.
just like him.
But
He's
none of these
jacked on that
cards
penny,
has
dude.
him with a horse body.
Yeah, well, that's the one you really got to get.
That's my Todd.
But it's awesome. We'll get this weekend to celebrate him at the Hall of Fame induction, and then the Rockies celebration at Coors Field on August 17th. I think there might still be tickets available, but a cool bobblehead of him cheering to the sky, all that good stuff. And I don't know if I'll be able to get to that one, but if it's anything like the Larry Walker one, it'll be a really special one, really cool one, and hopefully
I'm so excited. Basically the moment they announced the tickets, I'm like, nope, click. Doesn't matter how much it costs, I will be there.
Right.
I did the same for the Larry Walker one as well. Just like, no, can't let this one get me by.
Yep.
And gentlemen, I hope to see you there if you can, but if not,
Evan will do a live podcast right there.
There you go.
Game.
I'll do it.
Go up to the rooftop.
Me.
Yeah, awesome, and I always appreciate you guys tuning on. Paul, where can the folks find you?
You can find my podcast, Locked On Rockies, on your favorite streaming services or the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. You can find me at Paul Holden 33 on Twitter if you want to follow me there, at LO Rockies if you're looking for more Rockies specific stuff. My personal Twitter is basically all just Mario baseball stuff at this point. So.
What kind of Mario baseball player character is Todd Helton?
Man, so unfortunately, I'm going to go Luigi instead of Mario because Mario's got red bat and a little more power in some instances. So he kind of gets Larry with the defensive abilities. But Luigi, great corner baseman, can slap and get those. And, he's a great just general hitter, but also can hit it out of the yard. So when we're talking about finding the gaps, finding the right spots, Luigi, I think, is a good comp there. Good on defense as well. Team guy too. That's what I'd say.
Do you have Luigi as a centaur?
No, I do have Luigi tattooed on my leg, though.
Do you really?
Yeah,
I did not know that about
yeah,
you.
he's hitting a fastball, the flaming. Basically, yeah, I just went all in. Said, you know what? I'm going to be the Rockies and Mario baseball guy. That's how I'm going to make my riches in life. To an incredibly niche rooting interests for baseball. That's what I was going to do.
Hey, we all got to find our niche market, right?
Exactly.
There you go. You got Dustin and I, so we fit into that niche market.
There we go. We're rolling, baby.
How about you, Evan? Where can the folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. I love hearing from people. I love talking about baseball. You can also catch me on www.purplerow.com, writing the Monday Rock Pile and the weekly Pebble Report for our minor leaguers. And speaking of Pebbles, how about another very baby-faced Todd Helton for
Hey!
There you go. Dustin, how about you?
Well,
He doesn't do like stuff.
yeah,
You find him here.
I'm just a high school Spanish teacher, man. I just nerd out on these Rockies podcasts.
Yeah.
For that kind of stuff, I'm more of a TikToker at Mr. T Spanish. And on the Twitter, we are now Vamos Rockies.
Nice.
So a little Spanish flair there.
There you go. Yeah, you can always find Dustin and I doing every Rocky ever, and you can go back, find the archives. We've talked about a lot of guys. I think this makes about 30 episodes, 31 episodes or so, somewhere in there. And then we get Todd Helton in here. You can find me over at @sideline_crowd over on Twitter, and then writing for purpleroad.com on Wednesdays, and writing stuff for fansfirstsports.com. You can also tune into the Affected by Altitude podcast, and we'll have another episode coming up after the Hall of Fame induction. So Monday the 22nd. I'm not sure when this is going up for everybody else to hear, but if you're watching it live, that's what's coming up soon. But again, appreciate you guys. Keep up all the good work that you do. Appreciate you tuning in. And you can always like and subscribe. Follow us here on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting platforms. Also follow at Every Rocky Ever. And there's some guys I need to post, some newer guys. So hopefully we'll get some of those good ones up. But until next time, who wants to hit him with it?
Ma!
Farewell!
Right. I forgot about Kermit.
That was Ray Romano.
Oh, Ray Romano, Kermit.
I mean, they're very similar voices.
I thought it was Kermit. I always thought it was Kermit.
No, the Ma is Kermit. The farewell is actually Mr. Bean.
Oh.
And Mr. Bean. Before I have to pull up the thing if I can. No, it's on my other monitor. I don't think I'll be able to. Oh, well. Farewell!
What a way to leave them all hanging.
Oh, they can listen to the other podcast if they want to. Or here we go. Getting it here in a second. It has to go through Steam. Here we go. Farewell! Until next time, farewell.